Joining us now is former Chief of Staff to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Thank God we have Benjamin Netanyahu in charge over there right now. I think he knows the lay of the land intimately, and he also knows if he's about to go out into the alley for the big fight, he best not be looking over his shoulder for Barack to be rolling up his sleeves. This is George Birnbaum. George, welcome back to the show.
Good to be with you today, Dennis. I have to first say I really appreciate your comments on O'Reilly last night about this ignorant slime bag McGinnis. My father, who was a child survivor of Auschwitz, told me what Nazi tactics were like, and for him to insinuate that anything Palin did even remotely came close to Nazi-like tactics shows what a just ignorant amoeba he is.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to use that as in the way that they use that now, where he says, I'm not saying she's a Nazi, but the Nazis did that. You want to slap him on like 8 levels. You want to say, hey, pal, can you go take the Auschwitz tour before you start throwing this thing around like you're calling somebody, a rat fink? I mean, it's the craziest reference that they use.
Absolutely. If my dad were still alive, he probably would have on a plane to Alaska today. They beat the crap out of him.
Now, listen, also on O'Reilly last night, I did not watch me, but I watched Dick Morris, and he had the most succinct comment on the Middle East I've ever heard in my life. He said, if the Palestinians laid down their weapons tomorrow, there would be no war. If the Israelis laid down their weapons, there would be no Israel. That
Great
says
line.
it all. Says
Great
it all.
line. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Netanyahu, intimate, and tell us about your history with him, George. We're talking to George Birnbaum, former Chief of Staff to Bibi Netanyahu. Tell me a little bit about your time with him.
Well, I served with Mr. Netanyahu during his first premiership back in 1998 and 1999. Back then we had the same problems we're dealing with now. We had the Lebanese, the Syrians, Hezbollah, Hamas. Not a whole lot has changed. It's interesting. A little note people may not know about Netanyahu in '99 when the Balkans were blowing up and Muslims in Kosovo were being put in concentration camps by the Serbians. It was Netanyahu who flew Israeli C-130s over to Kosovo, rescued Muslim refugees from the concentration camps, brought them to Israel at the Israeli government's expense, and let them live there until the end of the war. So this is not a guy who has a grudge against Muslims. This is a guy who understands what Hamas and Hezbollah and the Iranians stand for, which is namely the destruction of the State of Israel.
I see this periodically. It's interwoven throughout history, obviously, but it reaches crescendos periodically, and is it shocking to Jewish people, as it is to me, a non-Jew, that you can look at that night footage of what happened there and somebody can still decry Israel. I mean, that boggles my mind. To me, that's not even, there's no observation going on there. That's just flat-out anti-Semitism to make any other call on that except, wow, they got snookered in, they hit the boat, somebody was about to die, they took care of their people.
The Turkish government raided the offices of this humanitarian relief fund, one of the sponsors of the flotilla several years ago in Istanbul. And they found their weapons, explosives, diagrams of IEDs, plans for jihad in places like Afghanistan and Israel. And the Turks know who these people are. And so for them to go out now and just condemn Israel is just so hypocritical. And Netanyahu yesterday in his speech basically said the entire international community is being hypocritical. They tell us we can defend ourselves and we have a right to defend ourselves, yet when we do, they all jump and pounce on us. It's as if the world wants a weak Jew, not a well-armed Jew.
I have a T-shirt that says that today. Now, listen, I have to say this. It could have been worse coming out of the White House because they have not exactly shown, when they make Netanyahu and the Dalai Lama enter through the Judith Exner Mistress entrance, it's not exactly respectful. So when Gibbs comes out and says it had regret for the deaths, right, but it supported an investigation to uncover the facts, and it greatly supports Israel's security. I don't know. It could have been worse coming out of that White House, right?
I'll tell you, I'm one of the last people to give credit to Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Yesterday he went out and said that Israel has the right to defend itself, and I gave him credit. I do give credit to the White House. Listen, the White House is in a very tenuous position. If they do anything to curry favor with Tehran or Cairo, Ankara, in terms of taking sides against Israel right now, Israel is going to lose all faith and trust in this administration and say, you know what, we can't trust them on this little thing. How can we trust them on Iran? And they're just going to have to go at it themselves.
So they might pronounce that if they issued any pro-Turkish statement here, but the simple fact is the back channel, read between the lines, certainly tell me that at least the higher-ups and the people near Netanyahu, they don't look for this to trust them on Iran, do they?
No, I mean, at this point, no.
No, I mean, they might not have pronounced it yet because why out and out evoke anger from somebody who somewhere down the road might be guilted into helping you. But at this point, I can't imagine Netanyahu's looking for this guy to back his play.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true. But quite frankly, even the UN resolution, and Israel is no stranger to UN castigation. Even their resolution was so tame and so weak compared to prior ones. I think what happened was there was an immediate, brilliant PR spin against Israel, but as soon as the facts started to dribble out, the world said, you know what, I mean, how can we argue with this?
Yeah. You know something, George, at this point, the UN is a building in Manhattan where guys in fezzes beat parking tickets. That's it.
Well, I wouldn't mind having that diplomatic immunity either. It's a pretty nice thing to be able to park wherever you want in New York City.
That's the only person they send over. They go, who should we send over? It used to be an important guy or a wise guy. Now it's their worst driver. This is what happens. Let's send our worst driver. We're talking to George Birnbaum, former chief of staff to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, let me ask you this, and obviously we're all guessing here, but say Turkey decides to send another boat. I believe they flaunted it the first time through. I believe that there'll be a redundancy flaunt here. How is it played? Netanyahu, I think, has hinted that, listen, we shouldn't have went in with paintball guns. This time we're coming down the rope with flamethrowers. And how do you see the second boat playing out if it happens again?
At the end of the day, like you said, I mean, in our previous conversations, Netanyahu is the right guy to be standing watch on the wall right now. And given the fact that these organizations like the Insani Yardim Vakfi, who have ties to Ahmed Rassam, the Millennium Bomber, funding of suicide bombers in Israel, the fact that these people are sponsoring these ships means that the Israeli government has to inspect these ships. Mm-hmm. They have to make sure that Iran and Syria are not using these ships to get weapons that can be used against Israeli citizens into Gaza.
And I heard Netanyahu saying, and quite frankly, give me the lay of the land over there in the West Bank. He says nobody's starving. That well, I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but tell me what's the lay of the land over there? This stuff gets through to them.
In fact, this flotilla over a week ago, the Israeli government said, come to the port in Ashdod, we'll inspect the cargo.
Yes.
If it is, in fact, only humanitarian aid, all the cargo can continue on to Gaza. In fact, 10,000 pounds a day of humanitarian aid flows into Gaza. In fact, things like cement, metal bars, rebar, things that could easily be turned into weapons are also shipped into Gaza vis-a-vis the land border between Israel and Gaza. The humanitarian crisis that everyone claims exists doesn't exist. What does exist is that the Gazans, the Palestinians, elected a terror group as their democratic leaders, and that terror group is reigning with an iron fist among their own people. So, the way to end all this is very simple, is for Hamas to get out of there. The West Bank is a completely different scenario. Where Mahmoud Abbas, they're fighting terrorism in the West Bank. They're cooperating with Israeli intelligence, relatively peaceful in that front. The similar situation could exist easily in Gaza. They just have, the people there have to stand up and say, terrorist groups cannot be our leaders.
Yes, and remind the people, George, you have to inspect this stuff. How many grenades are lobbed in a day? How many, weapons are shot into Israel on any given day?
The missiles, there was before the Israelis entered into Gaza last year, in that one-year period, there was over 3,000 missiles launched into Israel. And what's happening is that arms that are trying to be smuggled by Iran and Syria into Gaza now have further reach and greater accuracy, meaning they can reach cities like Tel Aviv, the outskirts of Jerusalem. The threat is really, really imminent. And as Netanyahu said yesterday, we cannot allow the port in Gaza to become de facto Iranian port on the border of Israel. Just cannot do it.
Listen, if they can frisk it for a flugelhorn going into Fenway, they can certainly frisk a ship coming from Turkey to bring stuff to the Palestinians. You want to make sure it is foodstuffs and, not the local pugil stick. All right, Georgie Birnbaum, good to talk to you. Once again, let me wrap this up by putting Dick Morris's comment out there, which I think says it absolutely all. If the Palestinians laid down their weapons tomorrow, there would be no war. If Israel laid down their weapons tomorrow, there would be no Israel. Enough said. Thank you, George. Dennis Miller Show.